The views and opinions expressed on this podcast, including discussions on news, politics, and current events, are solely those of the host and guests and are based on personal thoughts, experiences, and opinions. Nothing stated should be considered factual unless independently verified by the listener. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and does not provide financial, legal, medical, political, or life advice. Any actions discussed are what we would do personally, not recommendations for others. Listeners are encouraged to do their own research and consult qualified professionals before making any decisions. What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Impel Forward Podcast. I am your host, Leon. I got my man, KP. I call him Pierre. He's with me co-hosting. And today we got with us Mr. Frank Pollock.
Actually, it's Pollock.
Pollock. Yes. Okay, Pollock. You're correcting me already. God. But anyway, okay. He's an accomplished marketing leader with over 2 decades of experience at the intersection of marketing, technology, and innovation. His journey has been marked by a passion for connecting people, funding, and resources to achieve remarkable business outcomes. Glad to have you here.
My pleasure to be here.
His bio is long, so I ain't read it all. I just want to get a little bit in there.
The man is very accomplished.
Yeah. So you tell us more about who you are.
Yeah, so like it says on LinkedIn, I'm a marketer, and I've been a marketer for, 2 decades is generous. 3 decades is much more accurate. Mm-hmm. I sold my first ad in August of 1993, back when radio actually mattered. And so I had an arc where I went from media to MBA school at UT Austin. Hook 'em horns, any Longhorns. But then I spent time in corporate America at Frito-Lay's headquarters, at General Mills headquarters. I called on Target's headquarters on behalf of Colgate-Palmolive. I left corporate America and started a consulting practice. And then I've gone between consulting and technology companies and higher education since. So I was director of the MBA program at North Carolina Central. I taught at Duke in the Innovation Entrepreneurship curriculum. And then I've had a number of clients for my marketing agency, ranging from, small technology startups all the way to, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum.
It's a lot extensive. Even when I was researching, it was a lot to look up and look over.
I've been at it a long time.
It's been at it a long time since. So you got your start. I think I seen. You went to Texas?
That was my MBA.
Yeah. MBA, Texas.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to remember some things.
Yeah, but my undergrad.
UNC.
Give it away. He's UNC through and through, man.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Second generation.
Yeah. Okay. What did you get your drive for leadership business?
I'm a 3rd generation entrepreneur. So my granddad in segregated New Bern, North Carolina, he came back from serving in the Coast Guard. And my great-grandfather died in a workplace accident, and my great-grandmother took the proceeds from the insurance policy and purchased rental property in and around Duffy Field, if you know anything about New Bern, the historically Black section, and some other parts of the city. But when my granddad came back from the Coast Guard, he'd run the galley, and serving in the galley with him, interestingly enough, was Alex Haley. But, he knew all about supply chain and doing all the pieces and, procurement. And so, there wasn't a store for Black consumers. He was tired of, them being taken advantage of. So he opened up his grocery store, and then that led to a portfolio of businesses and real estate. He had apartments, and he was a bondsman. And so he had a restaurant, a coal yard, an ice house, a shoe store, barbershop, pool hall. He had, these were all the businesses in the Black community. And so, he passed that on to, my dad and his brothers, and my dad and his brothers passed that on to me. And so, while I was in corporate America, I thought about how can I become an entrepreneur? And, at a certain point in life, I just said, I've done enough of this. So it's time for me to go out on my own.
So no layoffs, no.
Oh yeah, there were plenty of layoffs. I mean, there's always layoffs in corporate America.
I'm talking for you. Did you ever get laid off? I know some people. That's when they take their first step in entrepreneurship. When they get laid off, they say, "Okay, I'm going here now."
Well, so I mean, I chose I could very well have gone and gotten, other jobs in corporate America. There was a specific area that I worked in that, they always need. And so I could have gone and gotten, another job and got calls about other jobs for, a decent amount of time, but it had run its course. Like my first client when I was consulting was a Gallo wine company, and that came because a former coworker wanted me to come to work for him.
So what? Oh, I thought you were about to say something.
No.
So what does it look like as far as you help people get funding? Correct.
Well, I have actually had a couple of startups, and so for one of them we raised $4.8 million. So you've probably seen the statistics about venture capital, and X% of venture capital goes to Black and Latin and female founders. We're in that. We're part of the anomaly where we have raised well more. Obviously, a significant amount of money, but my co-founders in that company, one was Black and one was Dominican and Colombian. So, but we figured out a way for us to go in and to get venture capital, and so that's how the conversation that KP and I had. Gosh, was that a year ago?
It might have been a year ago. Yeah.
But KP was making me smoke a cigar and drink bourbon. So somebody asked me specifically about the venture capital world and what is that and what does that mean and how does that work, and they told me, they brought up the numbers, and I'm the only person in that circle that touches that world. And so as I mentioned, I taught it at Duke and I taught business at North Carolina Central. So, I was like, do you guys want the full, lecture? You just want to answer, do you want the lecture? And, KP, so, you've heard of Furious Styles from Boys in the Hood?
No.
He was the father. Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was Curious Styles.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Curious. This is Curious Styles.
He always Curious Style.
He always wanted to know something. But so yeah, we he wanted the whole lecture. So I spent I broke all the stuff down for him, and that's how we got to this point. But right, I do advise some companies and explain to them how to understand I lay out the fundraising process, how they can take advantage of, it's like anything else. There are rules to this. There are levels to this. So you need to understand those rules and how to play them as aggressively as possible. So there are a lot of folks who, I'm thinking about this. I don't know. So here's what it is. You decide.
Now, when you say there's rules to this, KP over here, my partner right here, we always talking money, business, whatever, investing. He said we as Black people, it's hard to get money and it's hard to get into the venture capitalists and things like that. He's always
talking the truth.
Yeah.
By the way, we tell. Okay, go ahead. I'm trying to be quiet, Frank. Because somebody get on me about when we're interviewing someone that I shouldn't take over the conversation.
No, we say just ask the questions and don't get don't talk too long.
You tell me don't filibuster.
Well, so I mean, if you look at the statistics, it's very clear the percentage of Black founders, of Latino founders, of female founders that actually are able to raise money through the current angel or venture capital infrastructure. Fearless Fund down in Atlanta. They had their grant they wanted to give to Black women who would start business. They got sued as part of this whole anti-DEI thing. So regardless of but the outcomes are very clear. Why those outcomes happen, that's a different conversation. I can't tell you all the reasons. I can tell you that part of it is systemic, and part of it is, incumbent upon us to understand the rules of the game. If you understand the rules, you understand who the op is, you understand what the outcomes you want really are, then you can play that as aggressively as possible.
It's interesting that you say the Fearless Fund, because you talked about playing within the rules.
Mhm.
And the rules got redefined for them.
Mhm.
So therefore, and these are smart sisters. They got sued, obviously, I think probably by Bill Allen, all those different, we know who these people are who actually sued them, because they stated that they can not only raise capital or lend this money to predominantly just Black women. That was their argument. They found a workaround. And when we talk about the rules, was when the workaround that they used, they went through some other African nation or something they did to get the money to distribute it in a different way. The rule that you're talking about, was that new to you, or was that something they missed?
Well, let me be clear. One, I'm not talking about laws. Like they did that because someone attacked them legally.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the process for how things typically work,
Okay.
how they get evaluated, who evaluates them, and what outcomes look like.
So knowing the underwriting.
Well, remember, this is investment,
Right.
not underwriting per se.
Okay.
Underwriting is for lending, but investment is a much more subjective criteria.
Okay.
Okay. So if I underwrite, if I want to underwrite a car loan or loan to acquire this building, there's very specific criteria,
Yes.
that I'm going to use. There's a, history, the revenue for it, boom, 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 boom. With a startup by definition is a temporary entity
Mm-hmm.
that is iterating and trying to find a clear business model. How do you then value a temporary entity that does not have a business model? It may not have made more than a few $1,000s.
Right.
So that's the difference between underwriting and investing in
Investment.
venture capital.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's set some parameters here for the purpose of this conversation. Okay, so private equity, you hear that term, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that is everything up to an initial public offering. Be termed this, but there are a bunch of different types of what are called asset classes:
Mm-hmm.
stocks, bonds, real estate, all that kind of stuff. But venture is one of those asset classes. So that's part one.
Mm-hmm.
Part two, when I talked about a startup. So KP has an idea for software that allows him to book an appointment at or to find his chosen bourbon at different liquor stores as soon as it gets released on allocation.
That would be a nice app, by the way.
He could prepay for it, and it would be waiting for him at the counter as soon as he arrives. We can rock with that, right?
I could.
Okay. So that's all. So when you're building a startup, you start off with a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You want that problem to be painful, and you want it to happen frequently.
Yeah.
There's a painkiller and there's a vitamin when it comes to startups. Vitamins prevent things.
Mm-hmm.
We don't all we if I don't take my vitamins today, but if I got a headache, or when you old like me, if my back is acting up and I need to take something painkiller, I want that right then. I'm willing to pay for it. These are rules of startups that have been successful. Okay, so now once you have an idea for this business, you start to build the product. As you build the product, it's called a minimum viable product, the simplest version that can deliver the outcome and the benefit that you want. And you get it in front of you and me and your viewers who enjoy bourbon, and they can try it out, and you get feedback on it. So what you're looking for when you do that is called traction. So a startup is essentially a hypothesis. Remember the scientific method from like 6th or 7th grade science? This is really what we're doing.
All right.
Okay. So you put
educated guess.
No, well, it's your hypothesis, and you
That's
put
for
that
the hypothesis, right?
Well, but here's the thing. You see, we're aligned, but then you're getting feedback from customers,
which is the traction.
which is quantitative
Mhm.
evidence that
Mhm.
your hypothesis was right.
Right.
Now, we're going to come back to that in just a second, why that's important. So when you get to a certain point, I have X number of customers. I'm starting to see some momentum. It's working here in Durham, but Durham's a regulated ABC market. So now I got to figure out, how do I take this to Virginia, to Maryland, all the way up the East Coast,
Mhm.
Southeast. I'm gonna need some more people. I'm gonna need some more money. First inflection point. Venture capital specifically is only if you want to grow as fast as possible. It's not for people who, I'm gonna go from North Carolina to South Carolina, kind of see what happens. That's not what you do. Venture capital means I want to take over the world. Okay, I'm taking over in chunks. Very important. A couple facts there. Now, so when KP has his app,
Mhm.
he comes to me, a venture capitalist, and we sit down, and he wants to do a few things. This is when I talked about rules. Okay. The first thing is, when I'm talking to you about what a venture capital fund is and how these rules work. So let's say that you are Duke University or some other universities in town.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Y'all
Well,
lost.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but let's say that you run the endowment. Okay, you're the chief investment officer for the endowment. So you got stocks, bonds, real estate, and then 4 or 5% you have allocated for alternative investments, like venture. So I come to you and I tell you that I have an expertise in consumer apps. I look for diverse founders because I can get really good valuations.
Mhm.
And I have a team around me that's experts in technology and marketing and strategy and business development. And if you give me a piece of that 5%, I can give you back a significantly higher return than you get in other assets. So you ask me my track record, and I tell you it's my fourth fund. You go, oh, okay. So you give me a piece of that money. You become what's called a limited partner. So I go to multiple universities, states. It's a pension plan for the NFL, the NBA, and I amass a fund. So let's say it's $50 million. Now here's how that fund is structured. 10 years. I am at the end of 10 years. I am selling off everything. Okay.
Mhm.
I pay myself 2% every year. That's my management fee. So of that $50 million, then $1 million is going in my pocket every year those 10 years, right? So that means I'm only going to have $40 million to invest. I'm going to cut that up into smaller pieces and place investments in guys like KP with the hope that it will return the entire fund. I'm going to do that. I'm going to make all my investments in the first 3 years of that 10-year window because they need time to grow.
Right.
Okay. Now, what does KP do since he knows those rules? First off, he goes through and he looks for funds that invest in things like what he's building. One of the classic mistakes that we make, we got a meeting with a VC. Doesn't matter if that VC does not invest in the stuff that we are trying to sell.
Right.
Okay, we just happy we got the meeting. Matching between their investment focus and your company. One. Number two, is it within that first 3 years? If it's not, they're most likely not going to write a check. Okay. Number three, when you sit down with them and you make your pitch, you can pitch the story or you can pitch traction. The story is a great big vision of how you're going to change the entire bourbon consumption process in America.
Mm-hmm.
Traction is, I've run this in all 100 counties and I got this many users through this many ABC stores, and they're willing to pay this much, and here's how much revenue that I've knocked down. So we can't figure out how to pitch one or the other, or we're not getting enough traction in this process.
What's going on? I hope that you are enjoying this episode, but I wanted to take the time out to ask you to please subscribe to the podcast. I've noticed that a lot of people are watching but are not subscribed. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss an episode when it's aired or about to air. And also make sure you go to impelforwardmerch.com. That's impelforwardmerch.com. Grab you something. Now back to the episode.
So these are the kinds of rules. This is the lay of the land that you have to understand. But to many of us, we roll in, man, I got this thing. Well, let's talk about how you tell the story, who you tell the story to, and when you're going to be able to tell them. Now, that's a long explanation. I said a bunch of things. I'm sure you got some questions.
Yeah.
But I wanted to establish, when I talk about the landscape, number one, the rules to understand, number two, and frequent mistakes, number three. And when we get back with that, I got a couple ways for people to get started when we get through with this part of the conversation. So go ahead and hit me with your questions.
So listen to what you said. You said you had to pick the right VC. So if you go to the VC who's not in line with you, would they tell you that, or would
Yes,
they?
very quickly.
Oh, they will. Okay.
You're not going to waste their time.
If they're professionals, they will. If they're not, they may drag it out. And even if they're on the fence, they'll give you a no. Come back when you have this many customers, and then we'll look at it again.
You know what that says to me, Frank? So there's two ways. There's two things that you described, and I remember through our previous conversations. And I think if correct me if I'm wrong, but the mistake can be made. There's two ways to do it. There's this grandiose thing where you just sell it and you're like, this is what's going to happen. This is that. This is, I'm going to impact the bourbon community in this way. This is going to change the landscape in which we do things, right? And there's the traction. So it sounds to me that traction data or pitch will have much more groundswell, much more viability that will allow a VC to say, okay, I like the traction over the grandiose story.
Yes. So here, we can go a level deeper. As a VC, you got two bets: the horse or the jockey, the founder or the business. There are a bunch of businesses, like you guys use Slack?
No.
Okay. So there are plenty of companies that use Slack now as a means to communicate within the office as opposed to email. It was originally part of a gaming platform.
Yeah.
Really good founders will figure out the business. They'll continue to ask questions. They'll continue to listen. And eventually they will figure out the business. Okay. So that's one of the bets that they make. If you are, a second or third time founder that has exited a couple of companies and you have that experience, you can sell a story.
Yes.
If you're a first time founder,
you
better have some traction for this conversation.
Correct.
And if you aren't in the normal, if you don't meet you don't look like the other folks who they've invested in, you're going to need a lot of traction in order to really be able to tell your story as effectively as possible.
So when did you get your big break in VC? What was your first big break?
I'm not a venture capitalist, but I had an idea for a startup in 2012. And the premise was fairly simple. When you guys go to a restaurant, when you get a buzzer, we're going to do that on your phone instead. And we're going to geofence it and do dietary preferences. Because then Durham was all local, very, very, very much local, and nothing outside of Durham, or maybe from the coast with fresh seafood. So, in that process, I met a guy who actually he vets deals for Duke's Capital Network, and he started teaching me the game. So then, my second company I was involved with, we were doing, um, we were consolidating crowdfunding. So Kickstarter, you got one style of crowdfunding, Indiegogo another, so on and so on. So he actually invested in that company. He taught me a bunch more. And then when we finally got to a company that I had called Home Lending Pal, which is where I helped to raise the $4.8 million. So he was always an advisor and coaching me, but having gone through this. And so like we eventually, we had a round with a lead investor where we raised like $1 million and some change. And that's the largest check. But that was, I wouldn't say it's, the break, but that was the process, as I went through this more and more and learned. Now, there's some shortcuts to do this. It won't make you experts. There's some wonderful resources at the end of the if you stick around to the end of the pod, I'll talk to you about the books that you should be reading.
Well, tell us now, what books should we be reading?
I'm trying to hold your audience, bro. I'm trying to hold. So,
go ahead.
So the book Venture Deals
Mm-hmm.
was written by the crew from Techstars, and it breaks down all of the mechanics of this, the legal stuff, how you understand the legal paperwork, all that. Founder versus Investor is another wonderful book, and so it's written from two perspectives: the founder of a company and her largest investor. So at each stage, the founder writing like, here's how I'm approaching it, and the investor's writing how I'm approaching it. Now, sometimes you're going to butt heads. But the idea is so that you really come together. Because there are a few different types of, VCs fall into different, areas. Some of them also have, other hustles. They may be consultants or something else. Some of them have, some of them, quite honestly, can be a little predatory. Some of them, I will tell you that venture season goes dead. Right now it's dead, around Easter. It's going to be dead from Memorial Day until Labor Day. It's going to be dead between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
So what you mean sometimes they can be predatory?
So they may they may write, if you don't have the experience or know the questions to ask, they may write a term sheet or an offer that takes way more of the company than they should, or it locks you into a specific position, but in some way it will take advantage of you if you are naive. Now, you should have an attorney look over these things, but, some people, they trust their, investors, and so they don't have an attorney. And there's a clause in there that says, if this happens, then, our ownership doubles or something, like that.
Yeah, that's what I was asking you earlier when you said, when I asked you if you went to the wrong one, would they tell you that they're the wrong person to work with?
Well, so usually they will tell you that this isn't, a good fit for us.
Mm-hmm.
If they're cool, they may tell you, 2 or 3 that it is a good fit for. And if they're not, they do what they do. But, like I said, they have a 10-year window, and as long as they, convince their LPs and they show them the returns, they got a ton of latitude. There's no, oversight for them.
What are LPs?
Limited partners. So if you go back to our conversation about you with the startup, me with the fund, Duke would be a limited partner.
So how hard is it to raise money? Tell those steps.
Yeah, well, it is. So it varies.
Well, who's it for? So we know it's for. All right, let me just set the premise and what questions he's asking. We know it's, if you're going to seek venture VC, you need to be thinking in terms of scalability, because they're not interested in you opening 5 barbershops. That's not scalable in their in their eyesights, they're thinking more of national to global. So that's who VC is for. To Leon's question, what are the steps? And I know that you were going to lay out the steps, but I want to address who it's for and what are the steps.
When you say who it's for, is the question like do you want to hear the VC process from the founder's perspective or from the venture capital, from the founder's perspective?
It wouldn't be from the VC's perspective because our audience are not VCs.
Okay.
It would be from the perspective of, I have this idea and I need to get it out. And how would I start the process?
Okay. So now let's say that we go back to the the example of JP's Bourbonette.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you want to do is there are thousands of potential investors in the country.
Yeah.
And globally. So you want to shrink that ginormous world down to a very manageable set. You go to their publications like Crunchbase or PitchBook, and you're going to find a set of criteria or filter by a set of criteria.
So these are apps that give you VCs.
These are publications that list all the VCs and their transactions.
Okay. This is public knowledge. This is how you begin.
Yeah.
Finding by narrowing it down, finding the one through those two publications.
Yeah. So let's say that in your case, or I'll tell you exactly what we did with Home Lending Pal. So my co-founder at that time, Stephen, Navy veteran, my other co-founder, Brian, terrific entrepreneur, good brother. So we looked for companies that would invest in diverse founders that had in their portfolio at some point in time. Fintech, check size up to $1 million, had cash to actually invest on hand, and then were interested in mortgage-related technology. So that world of 25,000 funds and ties to North Carolina.
Okay,
that's where we start.
So that's your filter.
Once we filtered by those criteria, that became more like 35 or 40.
Okay.
So then you just worked out like a sales territory. So we started. I took 10. Brian took 10. Stephen took 10. And we went down through all of them. Look through their who the managing directors and the partners are on LinkedIn. Do we know anybody who knows them who can get us an introduction? We looked at their investment thesis and the things that they invested in. Is there anything similar to us, not similar to us in their portfolio? We looked at the backgrounds of the teams. Have they spent any time working for mortgage companies? Like we were trying to find what those lines are. So when we could, if you get a warm introduction, which is the goal, ideally from a portfolio company, that is setting you up for the most success. If you have to do it cold, then you want to be able to walk in and hit it out of the park. There's a big difference between saying, hey, I got this idea, and we're going to say, listen, in preparation for our meeting today, I've reviewed your website, your investment portfolio, your current cash on hand, and your professional background.
Right.
I think there's significant overlap between this, and this. Let me confirm a couple things. You were at this company, and you during that window you launched this, and you did this. Okay, so let me talk to you about exactly what we do, and then I want to line up. I want to show you what the alignment is. Then you go into your pitch. So you've already shown them I've done all my homework. Here's now my pitch. Here's how these two things match.
That sells.
Now, then you ask, given what you shared with me and what I shared, it seems like we have some alignment here. So, and you go.
You ask for the business. You ask for the investment.
But at that point, you're in full sales process.
Yeah, you're selling. At that point, you're closing because you presented everything, you made it align, and you presented so well that they got to either tell you yes or no. But you're asking for what we would say asking for the business. Because at this point, you've painted them into a corner because you've done all the work in the beginning. And now you've laid it out. And now it's either now you're just asking for the business.
Yes. So that's how you would go about it. But the pro tip, or, the hack, or, the secret sauce, whatever the euphemism is filtering down and making sure you understand the criteria to filter properly. So you're talking to the right people about the right thing.
Right.
So the example of the bourbon app that you gave, KP, could that be possible?
But this is
classroom exercise, Leon.
What you mean?
You're trying to make it real. It can't be real.
That's what I'm asking.
It can be, but can't be, because legally
well, see, this is the thing. Like, so you got to understand. So this is the process of building a startup.
Mm-hmm.
Completely separate from VC. I don't know, but you would have to go and, all right, is the state willing to share that information? I don't know.
Probably not.
Is the information public? Can you get to it? Can you aggregate it? There's a doubt. So this is when you're surrounding the problem and really understanding. Now, at time it may be no, but I can't tell you, because I'm not, there's not a way that not a thing that I've gone and investigated.
It is also, like Frank said, to request this and start your journey, you have to find a problem and solve it. So if we're looking at bourbon, you have to understand from state to state is different. Me being from Louisiana has a different law versus North Carolina. North Carolina has a law that you probably can't circumvent when you're trying to create an app to be first in line as it drops, because they are the bootleggers. They run everything. The state runs everything, and you cannot buy it or obtain it through no other kind of way unless you got personal connections. Now you go to a state like Louisiana, maybe so. But again, scalability, I don't know. Will it be solving a problem? Potentially. It could solve a problem, because you have a lot of guys that are out there bourbon hunting, and if you could make it easier where they don't have to go wait in lines or watch when the website and they're releasing a drop, that is a problem that can be solved. But yeah, so to answer your question, I know what the problem is. Can it be solved? Yes.
Well, see, that's the second piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the problem, but then you figure out the solution. How can I solve it? And there is problem understanding, and then there is problem solution fit. Then you go to product market fit. And you probably heard the expression product market fit if you've read enough stuff. But before you get the fit between the product and the market, there's a fit between the problem and the solution. Because there are 1,000 solutions.
Mm-hmm. But is it a problem? Mm-hmm.
But is it a solution that people are willing to pay for repeatedly, and can you deliver it profitably and consistently?
So what was some of your biggest challenges getting started in what you do?
With the agency, I was just a little guy, and some monster, financing. So with the agency world, I had a client in the consumer products world that I did some specialized work for. I'm not going to say the name, but I sent them an invoice on April 1st. They paid me on January 1st. Yeah. Okay.
ARs, man.
It was a pretty good piece of work, but and it was stuff I could use to sell other clients. So that, for example, is a problem with every small business. Managing the payables and the receivables. In the startup world, the challenge was always, there's so many of them that I've run into, but the biggest thing is the relationship between the founders. Because, I read a number like half of all startup founders have some type of, mental or emotional health issue. So if you're, because, if KP and I are co-founders of his bourbon app, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's got 40% of the company. I have 35% of the company, and the balance is left for, investment. What if KP, he goes through some things in life and he wants to go sit on a beach in Bali
Mm-hmm.
and, get his head together? Then I got to take that over. That's a huge burden to drop on. Okay. What if, I decide that I want to go and play a lot of golf and smoke cigars and bourbon,
Mm-hmm.
let him handle all it. So, that relationship, it's a marriage in some ways. And, it's one where, the passion, the interest, the skills, it changes. There's a reason that, 1 out of 2 marriages ends in divorce. It's a reason that 85% of startups end up
Right,
out of
because of
business.
that symbiotic relationship, and once you both got to be on the same page at all times, and you never deviate off of that, because that's where it clashes. Because some people get to a point to where they like, you know what, we got this. I'm gonna play more golf,
Yeah.
and that's the crash of your business.
Yeah, there's some people I've done business with that if given the opportunity, we could have one right now.
Mm.
You turn that camera off, we have it right now.
Mm.
But that's just the nature of it.
Let me ask you this, going back, and this is going back to something just so I can clarify. Maybe somebody's thinking this in the audience. The 50 million number you gave that you're getting VC, and you said somebody's drawing 2% off of that. Is that the LP?
No.
Who's drawing the 2%
Okay,
contractually?
So let's go back and give everybody the context so they understand. So you got your software company.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a venture capitalist. You're Duke University's endowment,
which is LP.
Right. So I'm going to ask a group of folks like you. So NC State's endowment, UNC's endowment, and gather all the money up to get the 50 million.
Okay.
For doing all of this stuff, I'm going to charge the limited partners 2% as a management fee.
Okay. So the VC.
Yes.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. I just wanted to make sure who was getting that, because we conflated it with endowment, right? You said with him being Duke being the endowment. And I know when you have endowments, the endowments is not necessarily there for you to spend it. The endowments is for you to make the money off of it and allocate it in ways to grow that endowment without touching the endowment. Mm-hmm. So that's why I wanted to come back to that, because you said endowment. I just wanted to correct the record so that everybody understood that.
This is a small piece of the endowment. So the endowment is going to be allocated in stocks and bonds, and real estate.
One of those assets.
So this is going to be a small piece of that.
Right.
That's much higher risk. And the argument that I'm making to you, the chief investment officer of the endowment, is I can get you significantly higher returns than you can get from the stock market.
Okay.
So that's why you're willing to take that risk.
Risk. Talk about risk. Talk more about risk.
Startups are inherently risky. There's a reason that, the vast majority end, out of business. Venture capital, there's a reason that, most VC funds, they're going to take bets on, they when they make investments, they hope that each one has the potential to return the entire fund, because the vast majority of them are going to go away. It's a very risky. If my mentor, who's at Duke Capital Network, said, if you're not willing to risk your wedding ring, your retirement, and your resume, then you're not ready to be an entrepreneur.
Say it one more time.
Your wedding ring,
that's your marriage, that's your money,
and your resume.
That's your credibility.
You're not ready to be an entrepreneur.
a technology entrepreneur. There are different forms of entrepreneurship.
Right.
Okay, but then in this context, like if you know, then
It's not for you.
You've probably seen this on social media where there's an older white guy who's talking to two young brothers, and the white guy says, "Do you know why there's sidewalks?" And they look at him and he goes, "Because the streets ain't for everybody."
Right.
Do you know why they're W-2 jobs? Because entrepreneurship ain't for everybody.
Right.
So anybody who's considering taking this leap, I'm going to say this very clearly.
Right.
There is nothing wrong with a healthy W-2 paycheck with really good healthcare benefits, retirement, and a stable income. There is nothing wrong with that. Anyone who tells you that you should give that up to go start a tech company, be very careful, because there is nothing wrong with safety, security, and predictability.
What about doing it while they're on their job, starting one?
So start, because you have to do so much with a
It's going
startup.
to be hard.
It's really hard, like to work,
It's your baby.
40, 50 hours a week with your regular job, and then you're going to come home. Where are you going to find another 40 or 50 hours to, like, you got to eat and sleep sometime.
Yeah, you gotta grind. I mean, yeah, I don't think you can do it. It can't be done, but
I mean, it's possible.
I don't know about that.
no, what I'm saying is this. Well, I'll go back to what Frank said when he looked into the camera and given that disclaimer, which is good. But I remember I worked with one of my former CEOs, and he used to tell me, he was like, "KP, you'll never get wealthy earning a paycheck." And I was like, man, that's a shot in the gut, because you're paying me, right? And what he was saying was that it's comfort to have that W-2 benefits. But if you want to get wealthy, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves. And so, because we expounded upon that conversation. So it goes to what you're saying, like, you can stay in your field, you can stay in your job and do well and live life. But if you want to obtain wealth, then you have to roll your sleeves up, and you can't collect a check on your way to getting wealth. W-2, should I say. You're going to get some 1099s.
So would you go back to corporate? Would you ever?
No, I can answer that for him. We had that conversation. Listen, I ain't mean to jump in, but we had that conversation. Frank and I have these conversations, and he heard me just talking about being in corporate America.
But he just encouraged the audience to stay on their job. He aggressively said no, he wouldn't go back.
No, in context. Right.
Well, hang on. I did not aggressively encourage the audience. What I said was there's so let me give you some. Entrepreneurship is romanticized.
Yeah.
We read in the newspaper the successes, but you don't truly understand the grind that you have to go through, the emotional toll it takes, the mental, the physical toll it takes. I have a dear friend. I've invested in her company, and I work as an advisor. And she called me on a Saturday morning and said, "I need to talk." And we met for brunch. And I've known her for 10 years, and she literally just started crying. And she, wonderful person, love her to death. She's a great entrepreneur. Things are much better, but like she literally like just needed to cry. That's what it is. But you don't have anybody who truly understands the pain that you're in unless it's another entrepreneur. When I was going through the process with Home Lending Pal, I was dating a wonderful lady. She's beautiful and smart and caring and genuine, and she has a wonderful job. And so I told her, like, I was up super late, trying to figure something out. And she said, "Do you have the right team?" I said, "Sweetheart, I'm an entrepreneur. The very definition. Can we use profanity on your show?"
Go ahead.
It's figure shit out.
That's mild compared to what I would say.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But I don't know who your audience is, and I don't want to, but be respectful. But But, because in large part, I think, when people use so much profanity, they don't always know the words to express themselves.
He's the only one I have to limit.
Okay.
Like, most people ain't gonna go.
It's
say so much.
just so the audience know it's passion. All right. Sometimes you got to be profane to be profound.
Go ahead.
But that's and talking to her, and she's an accomplished lady in her own right, but she literally did not understand that, no, I have to figure this out. And so even accomplished people in corporate life don't understand this. Only
Won't get
another
it.
founder will understand the path. That's why, if you're really a founder of a tech company, it's why we congregate the way that we do, and we look after. I'm in a different stage of life. Like that same founder, I picked up the check, and we, hung on a couple other times where I picked up, like, don't worry about it. Just,
Sound like dating.
no,
Oh, okay.
no, but this is like you're always there's some mentorship, and some of it is sharing the experience of, this is what happened to me. Here's how maybe you can, figure that out. So
And to talk a little bit more about that, giving more context about entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. We see people's failures in public. We can see Pinky Cole going through with Slutty Vegan.
Mhm.
She was making money, but she still finds herself on the other end of a bankruptcy and fighting to keep her home and things like that, which I think it was back awarded to her because of whatever happened. But nevertheless, she's having to rebrand herself. She's having to go back to be boots on the ground, roll up her sleeves, build her empire all over again. Because as business entrepreneurs, the other aspect of it is we're not taught how to be business entrepreneurs. We're making, and because you can start your business and it takes off, and you don't know about the holes in it, because I say that winning sometimes can mask a multitude of sin.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, I'll give an analogy of, when I was coaching 11, 12 football, a lot of parents used to say, well, coach, we won the game like 45-6, and you were still out there fussing and coaching. And I said, because I see what you don't see, because I know that winning sometimes can mask a multitude of sins. So everybody think we're so great. But me as that leader, which is the leader of the business, I have to understand that although I handed this ball to my running back, that right guard missed that block. That tackle got through. My running back was just so great. He shook him and went for 6. But what happens when we play us, right? What happens when we were in the fire? And we have to prepare for that. We can't get caught off guard. And I think in business, sometimes when some of us find success early, we don't see those missed blocks. And at some point, when you're playing against another team as equal or as better than you, you're going to get exposed.
Well, but to your point, that what I said earlier about understanding the rule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Regardless of the business, this conversation is more about startups and technology ventures, but
Mm-hmm.
there are plenty of people, plenty of businesses in the world that we have, that there are rules to do this, like Mr. Tendenism.
Yes.
Great example.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's got something.
Yes.
Does he have the right people around him to help him turn that into the money that it should be for him?
Can he, in his position, he has traction and he has a story to tell. He can, because he's mainstream, so he has 2 elements that requires a VC to invest. You wouldn't that particular situation, that person probably needs to seek venture capitalists. Well, no, I take that back, because how scalable is it? It's just one restaurant,
Right.
unless you're going to chain.
So yeah. So,
Right.
but I think there are a bunch of conversations that you would have to understand how savvy he is, and what resources he's going to need
Mm-hmm.
in order to scale up. And that might be an obstacle for a VC, because coachability matters.
It does matter.
And so if you look at typically, like if you look at the founders, so like, when our founders were together, so Brian, is an accomplished entrepreneur before we came together, but there's still things, that he hadn't experienced, and I'm, 15, 16, almost 17 years older than Brian. So there's things that I've seen and lived through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to be honest, I said I was never going to get involved with another startup. And then Brian, called me and said, I got this idea. Here we are 6 years later. But, so VCs will look at this founder, is good at operations. This founder is good at sales and marketing. This founder is that want to make sure that you have, and that the founders will listen and will embrace resources that you provide them. I don't know Mr. Tenderness. I know that he can, and take his glasses off.
Right.
I have not tried to barbecue, but like if you've lived in Durham long enough, you remember Ed Mitchell?
No, I don't.
The Q. He was a pit master at the pit.
I ain't never been. She probably been there. I ain't never been.
Remember Mr. Mitchell? Yeah. Now, he started out in Wilson, North Carolina, came to the pit, worked at the pit over here in Durham, had a falling out with, their staff, got in contact with some investors, and had a barbecue restaurant on Blackwell next to the ballpark. And that didn't work. You had trouble selling barbecue next to the Durham Bulls ballpark?
Mm-hmm.
Like what how does that, like, the barbecue and Durham Bulls, that's
Go hand in hand.
yeah. And so, but this is an example of somebody who is creative but not a business person.
Correct. And that's what you're assessing, Mr. Tendenism.
So-
Walt.
So what do business people get wrong about making money?
What
Or
do they-
businesses, period.
I mean, that's a broad question. you got to narrow that down. I mean, what businesses, what business people, like, you got to narrow. Give me something to get, because like there's, we can go from ethics, we can go to overemphasis of profit, we can go from seeing the future. I mean, bro, I could be here. I taught at a university. I give you a few lectures, so you decide which one you want.
I don't know. I can't think of an example.
Well,
I
it's
wouldn't
okay.
use my barbershop, but I ain't use that.
No, don't use that, 'cause then I'm gonna get mad.
He don't want me. He don't want me to
Okay.
take no trips.
Well,
So how many companies have you invested in?
Obviously, I don't know anything about the barbershop.
Yeah. No.
So
Frank with the Captain Obvious jokes.
So I was going to say, kind of leading what Leon's question was, I saw that you kind of work with General Mills, Disney. How did those working for those companies or partnering with those companies influence you to where you are today, as far as, how you are in your companies, and how is that driving you?
Well, when I was talking to Curious Styles over here, he hit me with a gem on Saturday. Everybody in life is a teacher. Some people teach you what to do, and some people teach you what not to do. Now, the first time I heard this line was at Mo Better Blues, when Bleak and his girlfriend, were talking. But I mean, the large corporations, they do a ton of things right, but there are also, things that I wouldn't want in corporate culture, or pricing, or in the marketing efforts, because there's just so much, but you get exposed to so much. Like I going to, like, if you think of a major grocer or food, retailer in the U.S., I've probably been to their corporate campus, whether, it's Costco, Wegmans, Publix, Walmart in Bentonville, and seeing how they do things as well. So I was exposed to all of that, and could gather that and say, yeah, this is how it should work. So like if you think about the culture at, Home Lending Pal, so we were around during COVID, and we had we had 3 girl dads, on the team. And so it was nothing for, a little set of eyes to pop into. And, we actually had every day as being take your daughter to work day. Somebody would always, turn the camera off. Say, no, 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 no. Because my dad, who was an entrepreneur, he normalized me. Like if I go to his office, he was an attorney. He also, had businesses, and he was talking about his business or something like that. He would have me sit in the office and listen. And he'd tell me, once I got a little older, you take notes for me. And then he asked me what I thought about it. So, I never, that to me that's what I knew as a frame of reference. And so I wanted to create that same environment for the girl dads. I'd say all that to tie that back to your question about, Frito-Lay or Mills or Colgate. Those weren't necessarily like that type of creativity or innovation in the culture wasn't necessarily in place. But in all fairness, when you have that many thousand people, it's really hard to do. So, it also made me want to lean to be involved in smaller ventures where I could have relationships and impact in a different way.
I would say, I know you have another question. I would also, to piggyback on what he's talking about, I would say the fact that Nico, us traveling that corporate circuit prepares us more for entrepreneurship than not, especially when you're in leadership positions, executive decision making positions, and or sitting in positions where you get to see where the sausage is made. It allows you to develop your entrepreneurial spirit, and it allows you to kickstart your brain. And because you have the experience of working for corporate America and seeing those things, all those things are applicable to when you do go into business. It's like, I'll give a for instance, someone who works, the number one business in our community is always a soul food restaurant or restaurant. And one of the things that plague our community is what? Time, right? You're like, oh God, it's going to take me an hour to get my food. Because somebody said, well, my aunt can cook, my uncle can grill, we come together and we got this family restaurant. So the times is going to vary on the food. When you work in, let's just say, in the corporate setting, you learn that time and temperature are key. You learn that when you're in the kitchen, because now you are managing, you oversee it, you notice that in the back of those kitchens, there's an expediter. And that expediter is in there making sure that this food arrives at this table at this time. We don't learn those things. We just go into business and we don't know that. Now, someone who works in that field, in the corporate sense, knows that. So they're prepared. So their business may tend to be a little bit more successful. So I would say that being in those things prepare us, especially if we segue into something that is kind of tied to what we've already been doing for, let's say, our conglomerates that we work for. Then I will say that, to your earlier point, those experiences that Frank has gathered gave him a comfort to when he stepped out on his own. He knew what to do and how to do it. He had a higher percentage of success rather than.
Well, to that point, and something I should have said earlier, processes and structure. So my dad, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he always wanted, as a businessman, he'd always ask me questions about what we were doing and those kinds of things. And I remember he asked me, because after we'd raised money and everything, and we were working through this, he's like, "Well, son, what happens if this and this and this?" I said, "Dad, we talk about this every Monday at 8:30." And he looked at us like, I like, where I work and my education. Like, do you really think we don't have a process in place every Monday? Payables, receivables, cash on hand, how much runway that gives us, and the optionality, the flexibility. So, with process and structure to what KP was saying about, this is how an expediter works. This is how you plan, you order, like soul food restaurants are, some of them are well run, some of them are not. They always out of chicken wings. How do you properly forecast?
Correct. When you work in corporate America, we're taught those things. We're taught to forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Or,
exactly.
Why are you not open on Sunday? Because we love to go to church, and then it's a family ritual to go get a little something to eat and fellowship and all those things.
Mm-hmm.
So how many businesses have you invested in?
So right now I have a portfolio of 7 companies that I have some form of equity in. Some of them I've written checks, and some of them they had me come on as an advisor. So as an advisor, I lend my expertise and my relationships, and they give me just a tiny piece. It's not like and they're almost always people that I really, really like, and we get along great, and so they want me to provide some type of insight or support or be an outside voice, or just ask questions.
So if KP want to invest in a startup, who
I would need an investor.
Who do you
for a
find?
startup.
Huh?
No, I'm saying I would need an investor for a startup. Where do I start?
No, if you want to invest
If I wanted to.
into somebody's startup, right? Correct. Somebody's
Yeah,
starting a company.
I
You
see
want
what
to
you're
invest in their
saying.
company.
You're saying
How
that
do
you
you
want to
find-
be in line with the partners.
Could you be like part of a, could you? Okay. So now going back to, the earlier conversation. So if you guys want to go back with the whole, founder, venture capitalist, and limited partner. So there's another class of investor, or there are a couple other classes of investor. So a venture capital fund typically has, raised a fair amount of money, and they can, write checks. So a smaller group is called an angel investor. Angels are typically high net worth individuals. They may have had, corporate success and, rolled out with a nice roll, or they, had a startup and they exited, but they love the startup process. They have a higher risk tolerance. So they're going to invest before venture capital. Okay. Now, then there's, the other option. So the first round in every startup is called they call it friends and family and fools.
Yeah. That's your first.
But there are a couple that I'm in that way, but it's somebody like, the one founder I'm thinking of, he's my guy. He's been trying, he finally got something, and it's like, bro, here's a little something to get you started, But there's a term called an accredited investor. And so to get involved in angel funds or in venture, to be somebody who puts money into those, you have to be what's called an accredited investor, and it's by a certain amount of assets or certain income. But it's really is a way to for you to self-identify as being savvy enough to avoid being taken advantage of. And then, but the easiest way is typically equity crowdfunding. So you're familiar, Kickstarter crowdfunding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
like what's the Isaac Hayes' son with the fan base?
Yeah, sort of like that. But
Yeah.
this is so like you think about Kickstarter, Indiegogo, any of those. You're passing the hat around. It's digitally passing the hat around. But with equity crowdfunding, with traditional crowdfunding, if you give me $100, you'll get a signed picture of us together, right? Or you get like when if it's a restaurant, you get your name on a brick, inside.
Mm-hmm.
With equity crowdfunding, you actually get equity in the company. So that's probably the smallest barrier to do.
Okay.
So I do have one more question, because you've used, like high growth companies a couple times. So with your background, your expertise, what do you classify as a high growth company that will possibly be an opportunity for you, your partners, that?
Yeah. So in the venture world, there's an expression: triple, triple, double, double. So you're going to triple sales, then you're going to triple sales again, then you're going to double sales, then you're going to double sales. That's what. So we talk about the hockey stick. So that's when you get into, so like I have to see like there's a terrific need. And we have terms like, TAM and SAM, the total addressable market and the serviceable addressable. It's really a metric to see. So like if you make clothes, like, I'm in the big and tall world. You make clothes for people like me who are, big and tall. You have a pretty good marketplace. If you make clothes for, people who are your size, that's the entire world. So, there's a difference in the TAM and SAM. There's the old saying, if you sell to the masses, you will live with the classes. If you sell to the classes, you'll live with the masses. So, but do you find the right market size first and foremost? Is that market, bloody and competitive, or is there nobody really going up? So I'll give you a great example of that. I team taught at Duke with a guy. He was 26 years old. He sold his company for $50 million. While he was in college, his best friend was killed in a car accident. Someone then stole the guy's identity, did a bunch of fraudulent stuff. So my co-teacher started a company that would notify Social Security, all the relevant government folks, all your, investment accounts of your death. Did it extremely manually, sold it to funeral homes, ended up getting to like $10 million and started getting sued. Figured that out, eventually exited for $50 million. There was nobody racing to go do that. So he had found a problem. It was painful. Wide open marketplace. Could grow and grow and grow and grow. Like who's going to think about this until, and when someone passes away, are you really thinking of, I don't want to relive that experience. I'm not trying to start anything. That's what I mean in that space.
Mm. If you wasn't doing what you were doing today, what would you be doing? What you think you would be doing? What would you want to be doing?
This is really what I wanted. When I left corporate America, I worked with an executive coach, and his primary practice was working with C-suite executives who, they'd either, taken like major, buyouts, like the 7-8 figure buyouts, and they had a year of separation. So, they were trying to figure out what's next in life. So you had all these, folks up here, and then me. And, we made a list of things that made sense based upon my personality. The agency, teaching, and, I am right in the space that makes the most sense for me. So I would probably be doing something similar.
And do you mentor people in this space?
I do. I mentor people that I really like.
So would you mentor this guy right here?
So curious over here.
Yeah, curious.
Sometimes.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but no, but I
He's in so many ways are mentoring me. In so many ways, he is. Because we have good conversation, and he's going to put it where the ghost can get it. The information he gives me, and here lately, I don't know what happened, man. Made a good guy. He's been looking out for me, man. He's going to take, give me some information that can possibly take me to the next level.
So I can kind of see like the advice and the things that I've heard. It's like that Shark Tank-ish. Like, so maybe you're gonna be with who is it? The guys that's on there.
Kevin O'Leary.
Kevin, yeah.
So I will tell you two things about Shark Tank. Damon John from FUBU has been a mentor for a wonderful lady that I know very well, Charlinda Scales, and her company, Mutts Sauce, MUTT' sauce.
Mm-hmm.
She's an Air Force veteran. The short story is she took her grandfather's sauce recipe from the family sauce and turned it into a thing. And
What's going on? I hope that you are enjoying this episode, but I wanted to take the time out to ask you to please subscribe to the podcast. I've noticed that a lot of people are watching but are not subscribed. Make sure you subscribe, like, share, and don't forget to hit the notification bell. That way you won't miss an episode when it's aired or about to air. And also make sure you go to impelforwardmerch.com. That's impelforwardmerch.com. Grab you something. Now back to the episode.
Damon has really supported her. But venture capitalists, by and large, do not like Shark Tank because this is the predatory stuff.
Yeah.
You hear them, I'll give you
What
this
a
much
percentage
for
of
this
your
much.
business, right?
Well, what you're really trying to do is, as a VC, is get them the capital and the resources so it becomes a monster. Not take like that part around, can I over negotiate or I'm trying to get an edge. That's not really what they're doing. Like the true VCs that I've worked with have taught me things, have made sure that, I got everything that I needed. And, if you listen to what Mark Cuban says about Shark Tank, he hadn't made any money. He had one, he invested the guy, guys in Vegas posting, his new sports car. Say, are we doing this or not? Mark is calling him, bro, are we running the company or what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
So, any more questions you got?
Oh no, other than next steps. Like, did you want to lay out, or did you kind of lay it out? Like, I know that you kind of wanted to lay it out.
Yeah. So I would say this: if you, number one, decide if you really want to be an entrepreneur.
That part.
Because it's not for the faint of heart. If you want to be an entrepreneur, then think about the business and the problem that you're trying to solve, the solution that you have. Validate that with traction. Then there's another important inflection point. Are you trying to take over the world? Or are you just trying to have a healthy business for yourself? Because if you just want to have, a business for yourself that provides for you, you don't need venture capital. Venture capital is really rocket fuel when you're trying to scale up extremely rapidly. If you do decide that, then I would go back and think about, finding the funds that are closely aligned with you, having the traction, working on your pitch. And I'll give you one last insider tip. There's nothing like passion in your pitch. Make sure that all of the passion that you have. I see a lot of founders who, they want to get everything right and have all their data, but there's nothing like a founder who's like,
right.
I live for this right here.
Right.
The same way that we argue college basketball in a barbershop, that same passion, you got to have that same type of energy and enthusiasm. Not in a confrontational way, but like you got to be, no, we can do this. Like you that's part of this stuff.
So you saying don't start nothing just to make money, but got to have real passion behind it. And if some people start business just, I want to make this money right here, but don't really have any passion behind it. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm saying that when your investor pitch, to make sure that you have passion. Now, to your question around, do you start a business solely to make money, or do you, is it something you're passionate about? There are a lot of people who, aren't necessarily passionate about what they do who make a lot of money.
Right. That's probably. I wouldn't think that would be an entrepreneur though. I would think that'd be leaning more towards somebody making money in corporate, making good money in corporate.
There are plenty of lawyers who, are dissatisfied with the profession, but they drive in really nice cars and live in really big houses, and they're entrepreneurs. They started their own practice.
True.
Well, that's anything else that you would leave anybody, the audience?
I'll leave everyone with this. At the end of the day's got to end.
Oh, this dude. Frank, I got a question for you, brother. Before we go,
I just hit it with the closing. Yeah, what's up?
You can close it.
What's up? What's your question?
What do you think the conversation would be between you and your grandfather of how he started a business, tragically lost his life, but his spirit resonated through your father and through you? What would that conversation be?
Yeah, so I didn't know either of my grandfathers. So my maternal grandfather was freshman roommates with a gentleman who became a chancellor at Morehouse. You're referring to my dad's
Yes,
dad,
your dad's.
who was who was very much the entrepreneur. I would be really curious to hear, how he viewed things. Like my dad would, give me some of his sayings and some of his wisdom, but to go do the things that he did at the time that he did them, that was, that you talk about getting it out the mud.
Out the mud.
That's as
Working
real
in the
as
gallows.
I mean, we talking New Bern, North Carolina. Not Durham.
Right.
We talking New Bern. So
Sticks.
yeah, I would love to have had that.
What would you
conversation.
think he would tell you about where you are right now?
He would tell me to enjoy it because I don't have the same burdens. And I mean, my dad had 5 brothers. All of them, if they were alive, they're my size.
Yeah.
So he had responsibilities, provide for his family and all those things, and but the same thing about understanding, look for opportunity, understand the rules, and you have to learn to navigate. Like so, my granddad was not a formally educated man, so he had to be smart in other ways. He did business with people, so they couldn't take advantage of it. Also had to look for opportunities, like because we're near, New Bern is near military bases. There were guys who might need specific boots or whatever, so he would go and buy 1,000 pairs of them. Make sure that all the soldiers knew you can come here. Black soldiers, you can come here and get these.
So he
Look for
saw
opportunity.
He found a problem and he solved it.
Yes,
So you're following his footsteps.
I would like to think so. Yes,
I think he would be proud of you.
I would like to think so as well. But
Before we end, I got one more question while y'all was talking. What are your next steps? What anything new that you're starting?
no,
No.
I'm not starting anything.
Okay.
Not starting anything. Anything new. I am. So between the portfolio, I have a portfolio. So I also work with University Technology Transfer. So with NC Innovation, I work with the schools between NC State and Winston-Salem State to help faculty members to commercialize their technology and bring it to market. So that's a separate conversation, and then I still have my agency.
Marketing.
So I don't need anything else. I'm good. I'm good.
You comfortable?
I wouldn't say it's comfortable. I think it's self-awareness. At a certain point in life, you know what you're good at and what you're not good at, and you know what you're interested in. And so, this stage of life, I'm doing work that I enjoy with people that I really like. The folks I work with and adore them. Fantastic, people. The founders that I work with, like I said, I would sit down with any of them and, have a meal and, meet their families and, do all that. And, the folks in my, agency, one guy, his mama, his papa, his little brother, I'm a great big bro.
There you go.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. There you go for another episode of the Impel Forward Podcast. And remember, seize the opportunity to grasp your dreams, just like Frank did.